welcome you. Joanna, enjoy.
Hi. So thank you so much for coming to the very first session, bright and early this morning. This is actually not only the first time I've presented a technology session, it's the first time I've ever attended this conference. So I'm really excited to be here and kind of leaping in feet first. And just to add a little bit to what Barbara said, I use iPads a lot at school, though, as most of you probably know, the iPad is a very new device, and our school got one classroom set that we share in the lower school just last spring. And I actually, with my leftover budget from a couple of years, purchased 4 iPads that I used for my lower and middle school music programs. So sometimes I've been able to use them one-on-one when I sign out the classroom set, and sometimes I'm using just 4 iPads for a class. My class size in the lower school is typically about 15, and in the middle school it varies, but it's usually small. So I have the luxury of having small classes, which is great when working with, well, pretty much anything. I've been using Apple products though since I was 5. My family got an Apple II Plus, and I was the main person who used it. And yeah, I see some Apple II Plus fans. And I learned to program it in BASIC. Now I know nothing about how to program a computer, but I could make little songs and all that. And as a performer, my kind of first career was as a professional flutist, and I used technology. We have a lot of comments. I used technology in a lot of ways, whether it was making an electric flute by playing through lots of stuff, and for that I would use a Mac with digital audio software on it, or just communicating in networking and that sort of thing. But when I started teaching in the K through 8, I had trouble integrating laptops, which is what our school had for technology, especially in the earlier grades. But even in middle school, kids get so, at least for me, that there were some situations, like I taught a garage band class, and that was great with laptops. But when the iPad came out, it suddenly opened up new doors for what is my personal cardinal rule of technology, which is that you want the technology to support what you're doing, be even transparent, so that you're still teaching music and spending very little time teaching how to use the technology. The iPad, and I'd be interested to hear from the couple of people who picked up my iPads ahead of time who hadn't used them before, how easy you found it to navigate. But it's amazing if you haven't seen a kid of any age pick up an iPad, even if they've never used one before, 10 minutes later they've composed a song. It's just very intuitive. It's hard to do anything wrong. It's also very portable. So when these came out, I was so excited when I heard that our school would be getting some, because it's kind of the technology that since I was 5, I've always been looking for, to make technology just another part of the workflow without feeling like you have to do a bunch of other special stuff. So I have a presentation that I'm going to be putting on while I talk. But it's also intended to be a resource, and I'm going to have it embedded or put a link to it in my blog. So I will give you all, it's actually on here at the end so that you can just copy it down if you want, my blog address, because this is also intended not just to be a visual presentation, but a resource with lots of apps and ideas and things in it. My one nifty thing, I was going to be controlling my computer from my iPad, but for some reason, I guess the Wi-Fi signal isn't strong enough. My iPad's not picking it up, so I'll have to come over here and hit the space bar. So when the iPad first came out, you may be familiar with the reviews, but before it actually was released and people started playing with it, there were all these people saying, oh, it's just a giant iPod, it's just for watching movies, it's just another media consumption device. And I want to show you an example of something that was done fairly early. Some of you may have seen this. Oh boy. Some of you have, probably all of you have seen this. Internet. I like it better anyway. So I've already, while we're trying to get this to work, I've talked about some of this, but some of the reasons that iPads work so well in the classroom are that, well, they're smaller, obviously. Even though it is a lot of money to get a set of them, they're a lot less expensive, especially than Mac laptops, and I know Mac computers are very popular in the educational setting. And
how much are you talking about when you say?
I believe the 16 gig model, which I think is fine. It's fine for my purposes because I don't load a bunch of movies and audio onto my school iPad. So the 16 gig one, is it $4.99 or $5? Oh, I heard both. It's either $4.99 or $5.99. I can look that up. But the biggest money saver, I think, is not so much the cost of the iPad itself, but the fact that most apps for the iPad, there's a huge library of free apps. And but then also, it's actually kind of funny when you hear people talking about apps, because used to people complained about how like Logic Studio costs $500. Now people are like, I can't believe that app costs $10. It's really changed the way people think about how much they pay for software, because the vast majority of paid apps are under $5, and that purchase lets you load it onto all the iPads or iPods that are synced with the same computer and iTunes account. And now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this isn't very important, but for those of you who are familiar with iOS, with iOS 5, you don't even have to hook it up to a computer anymore. You can sync it, you can get your apps, you can do everything wirelessly, and that makes it even more convenient to share between iPads, because that has been one of the things that's a real pain when you have to plug each one of them into the computer to sync. So they, and I spoke about the intuitive user interface. You just touch it, whatever you want, you just touch it. There's two buttons on an iPad, the home button and the power button. And the home button always takes you back to the home screen, and the power button always turns it off and on. Everything else is on the screen. I'm going to skip that video because it's not as relevant to music education.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
had a quick question. You were saying a lot of the apps are low cost or free. Now, with your classroom set, do you pay for one app and then it's able to load on all of those items?
Yes, because they're all on the same account. For me, it's a little different because my 4 ones that I purchased for the music program actually sync with my personal account because I have loads and loads of music apps already, so I don't have to repurchase them. You can do it that way. But as long as they're synced with the same iTunes library, like our classroom set of 16 is all synced with our lower school iTunes account. So you put an app on one and all of them can access it. Yes?
So about how much, and when I said classroom set, I'm talking 30.
Right.
About how much would it cost to purchase iPads?
Well,
30
if
iPads.
you're talking about 500 each, so,
Okay. Thank you.
but that would be 15. That's okay. Woo. Yes.
You said perfect for collaborations. What were you referring to?
The video it was going to show was one where if all your iPads are on the same Wi-Fi network, which they would be if they're on your Wi-Fi at school, there's lots of different programs that allow you to use 2 iPads together. That was a whiteboard one, and it showed 4 people all writing on what looks like a whiteboard, but it's all this. They're all using separate iPads, but it shows up on all 4 of them. And there are some, I mean, certainly a creative teacher is going to find applications in their subject area for practically anything, but that was actually a video kind of left over from when I did a general iPads in education spiel.
That's good.
I feel like something is Sorry. Oh, that's why it was the wrong video. When we switched prezzies, it went back to my general iPads in the classroom prezzy. That's why it had the wrong videos.
That was my fault.
Oh, that's okay. It's like, wait a second, I didn't put astronomy in here. Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Everyone has them. Okay, we're going to, woohoo. Oh, now I think this is going to be the video I meant to play for you. Any second now? Okay. The Wi-Fi in this hotel hates me, I'm sorry. Oh, I did take out that whiteboard video. Okay. All right. So, as you pointed out, a classroom set, while it's less expensive than a lot of technology options, to have one-on-one is very expensive. Some schools are going that way, and there's actually, I just read an article in my local paper from Durham that that a couple of Durham schools, there's nobody from one of those, is there? Just started one-on-one projects. Are you familiar with that? Which is fantastic. I mean, ideally, it would be one-on-one everywhere, but the iPad is a lot more flexible than people tend to think of it, because it's so easy to pass. This is just a picture of my students doing a project together, and depending on what app you're using, kids can even touch it at the same time. That can be a problem if they're in the home screen. But with the musical instrument apps, this is my kids experimenting with a couple of instrument apps that they were just trying to find what sort of sounds they could make. And they were doing that in pairs. The iPad is very easy to share that way. So that's an example of the groups. It works well just like a classroom computer. It can work well as a resource, except you can actually pass it around. Yes?
I just want to mention too that I often do, for example, note drill games and choose students on the iPad. I only have one iPad in my school. My PTA bought it for me, and so it lives with me and nobody touches it. But my kids will pair up and they work together as a team to do a note drill game.
Which note drill game do you use?
I use, they love it too. It's, I have to find
I haven't found one that I'm happy. What's it called?
Flash Note.
Flash Note.
Yes, it's a horse racing game, and the horses race along, and they have to hit the right letter in order to win, and they play as teams. And
wow,
it's great for note drilling.
So the thing about the App Store is there are thousands and thousands of apps. So it's any sort of directory you can find or resource is so helpful. Let's see. I saw one.
You know, the smart boards have the classroom control sets.
Yes.
Which would be less expensive than this. Is it worth the extra money? Would you be better off getting the classroom sets for the smart boards so that the children can have?
I haven't used Barbara might be able to speak better to that. I haven't used the classroom set for the smart board. I think it depends on what you plan to do with it, but for the creative collaboration, the iPad's going to be very different.
For the independent work, yes.
Yes, yeah. And
yes, if you have an iPhone, and I don't foresee us getting iPads soon, because I don't even have a computer in my classroom. If you have an iPhone, could you get the apps and then somehow hook it up to, would it work like that?
yes, you can. An iPhone, can an iPhone use a projector
You can use the projector.
with the dongle?
You can use a straight projector.
So there's this little dongle to hook it up to your projector. I use my iPad all the time, but I hadn't tried it with my phone, but they're saying yes, it works. So yes, so you can do it that way.
They block YouTube in this district here, so if I want to let them see real musicians do real music on YouTube, you can plug it in through, and if I can't get good service through my iPad, I can plug it into my iPhone. And it's free because I've got the free.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think probably most of us have YouTube blocked. So that's good to know.
If you would speak up when you ask your question so that everyone can hear. But I believe what you said was that you connect your iPhone to your projector because YouTube is blocked. And that was the same case in my district. I didn't.
Sorry.
But, all right.
I didn't expect it to play. Did you finish what you were?
Yes, I did. Anybody else want to use the iPad?
Okay, I can finally show you this video. Speaking of YouTube.
Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas.
I think that might be IMT Pink, because at the time that...
I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart.
Cha-cha-cha. Oops.
What's the name of that video?
That's the North Shore.
I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry
Hey, Chris. Whoa. My Prezi.
Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Arriba.
So that's the North Shore I Band, and actually, if you liked that, there's a the whole thing is like 6 minutes long, and it's a whole medley, and it has a handbell app and all sorts of cool stuff. So that in itself is, I think, super cool. It is a bit of a novelty, but it just shows you, and it was really neat how this came out just a few months after the iPad was released, that it's so much more than just a consumption device. And with the hardware inside it, well, you saw the which was neat, and they were shaking their tambourines. There's so much you can do to interact it besides just touching the screen, and it's very configurable. And there's a couple apps I'm going to show you that I have found especially in musical instrument apps that I found especially useful in the classroom setting, because like your ORF instruments, you can configure it to play just particular notes or just a particular sound. Sorry, now I have to come back. Okay, so as a reference tool, and this is especially if you have just one or a couple of iPads, there are so many things that you can do with it that you might be able to do with a laptop, but has those advantages of being more interactive. So I'm not going to talk about all of these because this presentation, as I said before, is more of a resource than just a visual presentation. But the books, the searching, Safari, all very easy to navigate even for a first grader, and on up. And if you do a lot of, if anybody's interested, especially if you have a personal iPad, you can check out my Zag case that I use when I type a lot. It turns it basically into a netbook, which can be helpful if you're using one for a lot of writing. The music app's incredible. The Pandora app is a great way to discover new music, and these others, and NPR Music if you're a fan of the stuff that they do. Discover Music is another one that takes like the music in your library or something you type in, of any genre, and it gives you this like map of things that are related and then a little less closely related, and so it's a really neat way to find music, and the kids can really use that. And something that I've just tried one time with my middle schoolers, because again, I haven't really had a really long time to be using these, but my middle schoolers enjoyed using that to find music that kind of gets them a little bit outside of their normal radio comfort zone, but still seems cool to them. And a few more. If I went off into all the related history and art apps, it would take the next 3 hours, but this is a few examples. The Wolfram Music Theory app is actually probably most appealing to like high school AP theory students or college students. Okay. And we got the Oxford Music Dictionary, just tons of stuff. One thing that I use mine for extensively is to carry my music collection around. This can be very handy for conductors and directors. You can turn that enormous stack of scores and whatever else, it doesn't have to be sheet music, into just this. So with Fourscore is what I use. That's my favorite, but there are quite a few that work well. It keeps them as PDFs, so it's sort of like a PDF reader, but it has so many more features than just a PDF reader, that you can notate on your music, you can play a sound file along with it, you can record yourself while you play. It does a million different things. Wow, the lights went out and now there's an ethereal choir.
Which one is
Yes.
Do you scan that music in and then put it onto your iPad and work with it in Fourscore?
That is what I do with my personal library. Fourscore, actually, here, let me show you really quickly, because this is an application that I hear of projects that can be adapted to different age levels. The first one, I didn't have a personal example, so I'm just going to show you a little bit of the start of a Toontastic. Oh, this is their video. This is more for lower school age. And it integrates music, and it's great for learning about how music affects a story. It's not as flexible as some of the other apps I'll show you, but it is loads of fun.
Have you ever imagined toys could walk? Have you ever
imagined? So in this, they create their own little, this was designed by, I forget which school of education.
imagine that your drawings could talk?
And then the shark jumps and then
I'll just tell you about the rest of it. So you move these little characters around, it records you, and you can record your voice, you can record music. It also has music that you can adjust within. You don't actually compose the music in this app, but I found it really neat for showing kids how if they put a different soundtrack with it, it's a completely different story, even if everything else stays the same. It's also great if you do any curriculum integration with language, because it's designed to, I forget which language program it's based on, but it leads you through the story arc, and has prompts that don't stifle the creativity at all, but help children organize their story appropriately. And so it's got all sorts of potential for combining things. You can also, if you work ever with an art teacher, you can see in this picture the shark is one of the built-in the characters that you can manipulate, but that person was just drawn in. So you can either draw in your animated characters or you can use the built-in ones. So there's all sorts of flexibility there. So I just love that. Also, if you just have a small child or hang out with one, it's wonderful.
What's the name of that?
Toontastic. And I believe it's $1.99. Did it say? have a link later. This is just 3 of my kids working on an app called Sound Slate, which is like a sound effects board. This is one of the first projects I had them do in these semi-permanent small groups I put them in. And I gave them a story I had written that was just a very open-ended story about these 2 kids who are bored, so they take a walk in the woods, and then they end up hearing strange music, and then they see a little house, but nothing actually in the story makes it more scary or more funny. They had to do all that with their sound effects. And they recorded in their sound effects, and then they operated it while one child read the story. I did this with my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders this year. And let's see. This is what Sound Slate looks like. It's just a bunch of boxes, well, soundboard, and when you, see if you can hear this, when you tip on, oh, oops, I put a song in there too. You can also trigger a whole song track. So they could be the sound effects person while somebody read the story. And then later I had them put in music. That's why I'd given the example of, I had that in there. This was my example for them, that they could choose a track from iTunes and also put it in there to trigger. So that was, that's Sound Slate, which I have more information on later. And then this is one my middle schoolers have tried. I'm going to give it a second till it's buffer. This is, if any of you are familiar with the Echoplex, which is a rack-mounted looper unit, which I believe costs about $900. This isn't quite as full-featured as an Echoplex, but it's also, I believe, 99 cents. And he's using it on the iPod Touch, where it has 4 tracks. The iPad version has 6 tracks. And there's a high level of artistry here, but I've been amazed at what my middle schoolers can do with this. And it has so many applications. You don't have to do it with your voice. You can, I use my Echoplex with my flute. So. This is the guy who designed it.
Voilà, salut.
He's French.
What's the name of that?
That is Everyday Looper, 99 cents. There's also one, I have a link to it later, that's similar that I only just tried out. It's also really cool. It's one of those things where they're cheap enough that if you're interested in getting into that sort of music production, it's probably worth trying them out. I've got both of them as links. I did not get this link put in. Wait, let me just see if it's here really quick. iSequence is a step sequencer. This is something that I find great for getting kids who are ready to see music represented visually but aren't music readers, because they can understand how it all fits together in the step sequencer. It's also great for like hip-hoppy, techno, whatever sounding stuff. So I don't remember which is which, but I'll just play you the start of one of his. Oh. I don't, wait, hang on. Sorry. That's the one. Very 80s. That is a, go full screen. That's a little picture of what it looks like. It has the keyboard built in, and then this is the steps there. Something that took it seemed like a very long time to come out was a music notation program that worked on the iPad. I was lucky enough to get to be a beta tester for Symphony Pro. Is anybody in here familiar with that app or Symphony on the iPod? No? Okay. Because it's the Symphony HD or Pro on the iPad is a much better product than the small iPod version. That screen just really isn't suited to much music notation. But finally, this has reached a level with several upgrades where it is not a replacement for Finale or Sibelius or whatever music notation software you use, but it is very functional and it creates nice printable music. Or a very cool thing is I can create something in Symphony Pro and I can export it to a PDF straight into Fourscore. So there's no paper or even any computer involved. It's just straight on the iPad. I can put in a song and then put it straight into my music reader software. Sample Whiz, if you like working with samples, is really fun. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is GarageBand. Has anybody here used the iPad version of GarageBand? It looks at first very different from the computer version, though part of that is just because by default it pulls up an instrument for you to play to start with, which is one reason I love using it with kids. Unlike the laptop version, when they first start using it, they can't find the built-in loops. So they have to play in actual music. If you use GarageBand on the desktop or laptop, you know what I'm talking about. The kids immediately go to those built-in loops, which is fun for some projects, but or for just creating part of the project, but is not nearly as creative or as educational in most circumstances, having the kids actually play in their own music. And GarageBand on the iPad has really high quality virtual instruments. And if you have one of the iPads, it's on there, but I'm just gonna try and show you a little. I think the big instruments you'll be able to see. Sorry, I can't get it to work with the projector. Now my iPad hates me. Come on. Hello. Oh my gosh. It just froze. iPads never freeze. That's also one of the things I love about iPads. They hardly ever crash. And there we go, crashing. How exciting. Yeah, how strange. Oh, you've got it up? Oh, do you mind if I just, oh, okay, awesome. Is that a new one? Or should I create a new song? So I don't want to erase anything, I'll do new song. So when you first pull up GarageBand on the iPad, it gives you a choice of things that you can do. You can start with an audio recording. Oh my gosh, is that mine?
That's fine.
Why does it take me?
Just because it can. Go ahead, do it.
Yay, thank you.
Act 2 or.
So you can choose any of these things. The drum set, kids love the drum set. So they can make their, I am not a drummer.
You have to turn off the,
So,
it's on mute, sorry.
yeah. Okay. They touch the cymbals in a different place, they do different things. The keyboard is fun. It's actually touch sensitive. I think it tells how fat your finger's getting, and so when you do it harder, it gets louder. You can also, I find this really useful for restricting my kids, because so that they don't just get blocked up or just make noise, is the smart instruments. The smart guitar, you can tell it what key you're in, and then it gives you this guitar that has, it's strummable, but the chords are there for you. So if they know they're using the G chord and the C chord, they can play with that. They can hit it at the top, and it does the whole thing. And sometimes I let them use autoplay. Sort of like band in a box. Or you can switch to notes with your kids who actually know what they're doing with that. And the smart piano is similar with the piano. It gives you a kind of funny piano keyboard that's restricted to, oh, if you go to notes. Well, this is chords. So it works like the guitar. But if no, that's not under smart piano, it's just under regular piano. You can have regular piano keys, but you can make it only play like a pentatonic scale or a minor, whatever scale you want. It has gazillions in it. Wow, this, I wonder if she has Thumb Jam. Since mine won't play. No, there's an app called Thumb Jam that, if you're looking at it mainly for the instrument capabilities, is really, really neat for education, because it has these wonderful sounds, and it looks sort of like a xylophone or something, and you can just play it with your thumbs, and it works on like on an iPod. It works great with thumbs, especially kids' little bitty thumbs. But on the iPad, you can use all your fingers, and you can play some really sophisticated stuff. But it can be restricted to whatever scale, and the guy who wrote it is a professional musician, and he has, anything you can think of scale-wise in there and sound-wise. Question?
What's the name of your blog?
Oh, yes, I had that at the end. It's Motley Muse, here, there it is, Motley Muse, MOTLEYMUSE.blogspot.com.
And I will link that off of the NCMEA technology page sometime either today or tomorrow.
Thank you. So I have my regular blog where I put, just my regular entries. Sometimes they're music text, sometimes they're not. But I also keep updated my iPad app, Megalist, in all these different categories. So the apps that I talked about today all have links there and more information about the app and screenshots. Yes?
Question about that Symphony Pro.
Yes.
Would that, I don't know how that works, but if I play the guitar or the piano, is it does it put it into notation automatically?
Yes. It has a little built-in piano. Let me find my screenshot from Symphony. There. So that's a screenshot from Symphony Pro. It looks a little different now since they upgraded it. They made some improvements. But you can enter through dragging and dropping notes, or you can do step editing or real-time playing from the little keyboard. And just like any MIDI entry notation, it doesn't always get it exactly right. It gets the notes right, but it's very flexible. You can edit it easily, and it looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Joanna, I want to thank you very much for presenting today. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions. And if you could please bring back my iPads.